Now from KWWL, this is the Steele Report.
And welcome to a special hour-long edition of the Steele Report for this week, as you're going to hear directly today from the two candidates for Black Hawk County Sheriff. Let's meet them right now. Tony Thompson is the current Black Hawk County Sheriff seeking re-election to a fourth term, having been first elected Sheriff of Black Hawk County back in 2008, following the retirement of longtime Sheriff Mike Kubik. Sheriff Thompson has been an officer with the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office approximately 26 years, and he is the Democratic candidate. Dan Trelka is a current Black Hawk County Supervisor, winning his first term in the 2018 election. He has spent 30 years in law enforcement as an officer, including most recently his 10 years as Waterloo Police Chief. He is the Republican candidate for Sheriff and the only Republican on the Black Hawk County Board of Supervisors. We did have a coin toss earlier, and that is determined that Chief Dan Trelka, Supervisor Trelka, will begin with his opening statement right now.
Thanks, Ron. When I retired as the police chief, I had no intention of running for sheriff. I was going to enjoy my retirement, enjoy and engage in my duties as a Black Hawk County supervisor, but I was approached to run. And I told the individuals that approached me that I would consider it. I was actually getting ready to go on vacation. I went on vacation, I talked it over with my family, I contemplated it. And on the Board of Supervisors, there are 5 members on the Board of Supervisors. It's like having 5 mayors for the county. That's not an easy ship to turn. So I found the position of sheriff to be more appealing because it's a ship you can turn much more quickly and much more deftly. I came back from vacation, talked it over with other individuals. I had hired about a dozen deputies to be Waterloo police officers. I talked with them, I talked to others, and I decided I was going to run. You know, I like when voters have a choice in candidates. I thought it was a natural segue. We accomplished so much at the Waterloo Police Department. I thought it would be a natural segue to continue some of these accomplishments when it comes to crime rate, when it comes to people returning to jail. So what pushed me over the fence is when others told me, what have you got to lose? And I decided I would go for it. I'd throw my hat in the ring. And when I actually did retire on December 31st, a month or two later, I was glad I threw my hat in the ring because, in a way, I miss my law enforcement career. I enjoyed being a law enforcement officer. I don't disparage Tony. I respect Tony, and we're going to have a gentleman's contest.
All right, Chief Dan Trelka, Supervisor Trelka, thank you very much for your opening statement. Let's go now to Black Hawk County Sheriff Tony Thompson. Opening remarks.
First of all, Ron, I want to thank you and KWBL for giving us the opportunity to have this discussion. It's certainly worthwhile during the pandemic. This is a hard thing for candidates to take care of, getting out and reaching constituents and voters, and so this is a great opportunity for us. When I first became sheriff, I promised the voters that I would be an investment in the future of our agency, and I hope to be that long-term investment. When I first took office, I began the long, slow process of modernizing our agency. And during the past 12 years, we've overhauled just about every piece of that organization. There are way too many modernization processes and way too many improvements for me to mention right here, right now. But everything from cutting-edge new data and security technologies to model programs for crisis intervention training and other training opportunities, inmate worker programs, mental health diversion programs, and mobile crisis. A wide range of inmate rehabilitation programs within the jail, citizen opportunities to intervene and communicate with us, a citizen's complaint and audit form, and even budgeting, the way we budget, the way I approach budgeting, being able to return unused portions of the budget every year. All of that is important to me. So what it does is it makes our sheriff's office much more complex, much more fleet-footed, but certainly a lot more complex with regard to how we approach the business that we do now. We are responsive to a much more diverse and complex community, both rural and urban, for the 135,000 approximately citizens that we respond to every single day. And this is not an organization that should be turned over to someone that has absolutely zero experience of managing a sheriff's office. As a citizen, I hope that you can trust me to continue to move forward and grow this organization as we have the last 12 years. And quite frankly, that investment in that long-term growth and that investment in trust is why I'm running for re-election this time.
All right, Sheriff Thompson, thank you very much for both of you for your opening statements. My first question, and again, a coin flip determined that Sheriff Thompson gets to answer this first, is really philosophical. In today's changing environment, with so much focus and really scrutiny on law enforcement, what is the role today of the Sheriff of Black Hawk County?
I think the Sheriff of Black Hawk County has got to be the champion, has got to be the leader, has got to be the initiator of change. We've got to recognize the changing sands, the changing climate. We have to be the champion of that guardianship of what we're obligated to the citizens. Now more than ever, we have to own the misdeeds and the mistakes of that national narrative that has created the crisis for law enforcement across the United States. And quite frankly, when law enforcement owns the mistakes that are made nationally, we hate it. We hate owning it. We hate the fact that our good efforts every single day are misunderstood or are undone by one bad thing that happens. That frustrates. But by owning it, by stepping up and saying we recognize the fact that things can be done differently, we should subject ourselves to more scrutiny. We should be able to rise above and commit ourselves to the bastion of all that is good and rise above the rhetoric and all of that national scrutiny and be those champions of guardianship at all levels. I think that's what the elected law enforcement officer in Black Hawk County is responsible to, and being that standard bearer. That's why we do it.
How do you view the role of Black Hawk County Sheriff in today's environment?
Yeah, and it's evolved with COVID, national events, with protests and riots. First and foremost, adherence and honoring the Constitution of Iowa, the Constitution of the United States. Secondly, and here's where it gets a little tough, representing all the people within Black Hawk County, whether they're black, whether they're white, whether they're Christian, whether they're Muslim, whether they're atheist, and even when they disagree with you, representing all, and whether they're Democrat or Republican or independent, representing all those different factions and representing them fairly. So those are what I think the role of sheriff in Black Hawk County embodies and what they should adhere to, especially in these times. And what's interesting, it changes almost day to day with COVID, protests across the country, and we just need to be mindful of what our Constitution says.
All right, thank you very much, Supervisor Chalka, Chief Chalka. I call you Chief because I still call Frank Maxima Chief, and he hasn't been Waterloo Fire Chief for years. It's just a hard habit to break. What brought you back into law enforcement when you said, I'm retiring?
Yeah, there wasn't a specific incident. It just seemed like a good fit. And since I've retired December 31st, as I said earlier, I admit I do miss being involved in law enforcement. But the opportunities for me with I had success in Sturgeon Bay with that department. I took over a department with challenges, and I came from within that department. Came to Waterloo, morale was in the tank. It was comical. One of the simple things that the officers complained about is they all had to wear white t-shirts, and I'm always looking for low-hanging fruit. So one of the first decisions I made, and it's comical looking back, is I allowed the officers to wear white, black, or blue t-shirts. It was something that simple. What I find intriguing is as morale improves in an agency, that fruit gets higher to pick. And then I was here only a mere 9 months, and Mayor Buck Clark asked me to get involved with the fire department. So I became the public service, or the safety services director. And in reality, I was the department head for the fire department, but the way I operated is I operated as a captain to the fire chief. And we made improvements to policies after we reviewed the policies. We tightened up the background investigations for firefighters. And I had absolutely no firefighting experience at all. But like Buck Clark even said, he said, Dan, I don't expect you to fight fires. I just want you to go over there and help manage that department. And it was a success. And in 2016, Mayor Hart decided, Dan, you're too busy between two departments. I just want you to focus on the police department. So I came back to the police department. So it was no single incident. I found it intriguing. As I said, being on the Board of Supervisors, 5 members of us, 3 have to agree to turn that ship. Being sheriff, you can turn that ship so much more quickly. And the timing was right too. I was approached by individuals who were involved with religious organizations that wanted to talk about jail ministries and working with inmates getting out of jail. Pastor Q, Boomer Smith, Dan Paxton, many individuals, and the timing was just right. And I like the voters, I like them to have a choice in candidates that are running. So we're making it a good race, we're making it a competitive race, and we'll see what happens comes November 3rd.
Sheriff Thompson, how surprised were you when you heard that the former police chief of Waterloo was going to be your opponent in this very competitive race? So what was your reaction, and how do you feel about it today as we sit here, obviously social distancing, 6 feet apart?
Obviously, I'm not good at being transparent. I'm obviously transparent, always transparent. So I'm not good at hiding my feelings or not good at sheltering people from the way I feel. When that announcement came out that Monday morning, I think everybody knew how I felt. I was not happy. I was disrespected. I was flabbergasted. I was not pleased by any stretch of the imagination. I was most disrespected that there was no warning. There was no, hey, I'm giving you a courtesy call. I'm, letting you know I'm going to do that. That was disappointing to me. It just demonstrated a lack of integrity. But that being what it is, I agree with Dan. This is going to be a spirited campaign. It's going to be a good race all the way to the finish line.
All right, my next question I'm going to send right back to the sheriff, and this is a question that clearly you feel you've earned a 4th term. Can you again cite a specific example that would be easy for everyone to understand who's watching this today about how you feel your leadership has improved public safety for the residents and citizens of Black Hawk County?
I think there's several things that I've done to demonstrate true leadership. Probably the most recent would be the COVID piece. I was very resistant when I got the call on a Saturday morning that they wanted to open the Emergency Operations Center when Dr. Nafisa Sisi Obonye contacted and then Lori Glover contacted me and said, hey, we want to open the EOC. I knew what that meant. I knew the time, energy, and effort that would take to stand that up. And I said, okay, sell me. Sell me why we should do this, why we should start spending this kind of resource to open that up for something that really hasn't hit Black Hawk County yet. And so they did, and they spent quite a little bit of time educating me on where we stood that particular day and where they forecasted we would be in a week, a month, and the things kind of behind the scenes of what they were already tracking. And by the end of that conversation, I said, all right, you sold me, I get it. We definitely need to open up the EOC. From that point forward, obviously we know the steamroller of what occurred at the beginning stages of that pandemic and Tyson and everything else that occurred along that meteoric rise that we experienced in COVID cases back in April. I got a lot of flack that, the sheriff is supposed to be a law enforcement officer. He's supposed to be out there leading an agency that responds to crime. And I take a little bit of exception to that. I'm not just a law enforcement officer, I'm a public safety officer. I'm supposed to protect the safety of our citizens. And what an unorthodox role a pandemic is. But I am the enforcement arm of public health. When public health wants to go inspect someplace and they can't get in, they fall back on law enforcement to exercise that piece of the Iowa Code. And that is exactly what we did, and that's part of the reason why I became the operations officer for the Emergency Operations Center. Again, unorthodox role, but one that I wouldn't change, one that I'm pleased to have performed in that status, and one that I hope validated some of the obligations that I was able to demonstrate front line, because each and every day we recognize the importance of public safety, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's searching for a missing child, whether it's whatever the case may be. As a law enforcement officer, this is what we do.
All right, thank you. Chief, you heard what the sheriff just said. I want you to respond to that if you can here before we take a break. And don't be in any hurry, we're going to get there in a moment. But give us an example of where you feel Sheriff Thompson was wrong and what you might have done differently.
Well, and it came out publicly because we had discussions during the Board of Supervisors meeting. I had a concern with opening the EOC so soon. all of us were initially led to believe that we were going to have people falling over dead in the streets from COVID, from this virus. And I call it a monster. It is a monster. It's bad. So I was concerned with how contagious it was going to be and getting people in close proximity of one another in an environment such as that. My second concern was I didn't want to fatigue people if we get them together too quickly. But it did evolve to the point where it became more virtual. I attended a couple of the meetings virtually. It worked out well. It worked out well. But I still have the concern that I thought, well, do we need to open it that quickly? And again, information is changing every day. This monster did not end up being as bad as I initially thought. What's sad is in the beginning, I would run into people that I would look at them and say, gosh, this thing is so bad, this person's going to, I may never see this person alive again. Thank goodness it isn't that way. My brother who has leukemia, I thought he would not survive this. He survived it. The gentleman that benefited from my kidney donation, he had COVID. He survived it. We've got a long way to go, but those are my thoughts, and that's my position.
Do you regret, though, being opposed to that opening?
No, not initially. Sometimes you just got to take a stand. And I was elected to represent the people of Black Hawk County. Every decision I've made as a supervisor, I have no regret. None at all.
Sheriff, first of all, does Black Hawk County need a mask mandate?
I don't know that it necessarily needs a mask mandate. I think the mask mandate was a missed opportunity to further educate, to further enforce, to further give business owners that want an out, want an excuse to be able to do the right thing. I think there was a missed opportunity there. But for those that wouldn't do it any other way, there's that opportunity too. But at the end of the day, people are going to do what people are going to do, and I tried to assure the board that obviously this is, as we triage crime and problems in Black Hawk County, enforcing mask mandates is not high on our priority list.
Right. Had it come up for a vote, I'm assuming you would have voted against it. And
yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that real quickly.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be standing alone on that vote. I was kind of surprised myself that 3 others stood with me, and I have several concerns with it. The cities, and I believe in wearing a mask. I carry one with me at all times. If I go into a store that requires us to wear one, if I go into a city that requires us to wear one, I wear it. But let the cities decide, let the communities decide. Waterloo has one, Cedar Falls has one, Evansdale doesn't. The other small communities, I don't believe they do. I was worried this was just complicated. Also, I didn't want to criminalize not wearing a mask. We're seeing a woman was arrested for not wearing a mask at an outdoor football game. A guy's at a school board meeting and he's physically removed by officers because he's not wearing a mask. Law enforcement has enough challenges right now. I don't want those challenges to be compounded. Also, how is this, by criminalizing it, I was concerned how it's going to impact members of our community who are already marginalized. I know a woman in Waterloo who's an addict. She can't go into some of our local gas stations. She can't go into some of our local grocery stores. So she gets arrested for trespassing because the businesses contact the Waterloo Police Department and they said, listen, you've been here 3 times now in the past 2 days. You have to do something with her. So they end up arresting her. She doesn't care about a mask. I'm worried how that would impact her. The governor says it's not. We don't have the authority. The Attorney General says we don't have the authority. For all those reasons and more, I decided I was going to vote against it, and I'm humbled that 3 other county supervisors stood with me.
All right, we're going to take a short break here in our 1-hour special presentation of the sheriff's candidates here in Black Hawk County. We'll come in right back. Our show also, as always, will be online on kwwl.com. We'll be right back in a moment. And welcome back to the Steele Report for this week, an hour-long edition, kind of a forum involving the 2 candidates for Black Hawk County Sheriff, former Waterloo Police Chief Dan Trelka, a current Black Hawk County Supervisor, and longtime Black Hawk County Sheriff seeking his 4th term, that is Sheriff Tony Thompson. And my question to begin this particular segment begins with you, Sheriff, and it actually came in several months ago, and it's a COVID question because, and it came to me several months ago from several various forms from different viewers, and it goes to you, and it said this: I have nothing against Tony Thompson, but how did he get control of the COVID press conferences when I feel they should have been conducted by the health department or the supervisors and not the sheriff running for re-election? It gave him a huge advantage over his opponent. So have a response to that?
Well,
I think it's a legitimate question,
sure.
probably, yeah.
I'm also, so I wear several hats. I'm the chair of several different commissions and boards, and one of them, this was kind of one of those 1, 2, 3, not it kind of votes. When the Emergency Management Commission voted to replace Frank Magsman as the chairperson, all of the mayors voted me as the new chairman. So I am the chairperson of Emergency Management, which is why they called me to open up the Emergency Operations Center. So when it was the decision to stand up that Emergency Operations Center, I am the chairperson. I'm the one in charge of emergency management. And so when we stood that up, I said that I would be willing to do the operations side of this house because Nafisa was going to be the actual incident commander. And those two roles traditionally on any incident are the two. The operations role and the incident command role are the two that basically manage the incident. It wasn't really a conscious decision, especially at the beginning. We weren't really doing press conferences. We weren't engaging in that role at all. But it became pretty clear as soon as we started seeing the breaches that we had, as soon as the Tyson issue became kind of a forefront, and as soon as we saw that meteoric spike, we knew that we had to start doing public education pretty quickly.
Chief, your response to that, did you kind of cringe every time a press conference came on?
Well, I was concerned about the optics of it because right now there's distrust at every level of the government. Our society is so fragmented, so divisive. There's distrust at the local level, the state level, county level, and the federal level. And here's the analogy I use with people. What if the commander of the State Patrol of Iowa took such a prominent role in the state's response to COVID? What if the federal government, what if the FBI director or the CIA directors took such a prominent, visible role in response to our COVID, confronting it? So those are the concerns I had. And I was leery of the optics. People have asked me, well, why weren't you more involved? Well, as a county supervisor, I was doing what I could for the employees and for our county. And like I said, I did have concerns with the optics of a law enforcement official being so heavily involved in our COVID response.
Now, Sheriff Thompson, I just saw you shake your head. I don't know if I was supposed to see that or not, but I want you to, what did you mean by that? You were responding to what the chief was saying.
I would be very interested to know in what Supervisor Trelka was doing while we were out working COVID, because I didn't see him. He says he attended 2 virtual meetings, but as a supervisor, one of 5, he could have been very engaged. He should have been very engaged. I had upwards of 70+ people every day in my planning meetings at the Emergency Operations Center. 70+ people representing school districts and volunteer agencies and service organizations and every string of government in Black Hawk County. And he was not present. And he was non-existent. He bragged on Facebook that he was exercising silent diplomacy with Tyson, and even told one of his constituents that that silent diplomacy somehow benefited him in a $500 donation to his campaign. I don't understand how he says that he was working behind the scenes helping Black Hawk County. We were on the front lines of Black Hawk County fighting those fights. Whether they agree or disagree that I should or should not have been there, I was there every day, doing everything from driving a fork truck to breaking down boxes, passing out PPE, to again, delivering important, timely information. I just didn't see him.
So, Chief, I suspect you would like to respond to that. What were you doing then?
Well, there was frequent and regular communication between myself and the other board supervisors. We were taking care of our county employees. We passed a resolution for people to wear a mask when they come into the county. We took action for paid administrative leave for our employees to protect them from this monster. I was on the phone regularly and had regular meetings with the production manager at Tyson. As a matter of fact, I just had a conversation with him last night. I was in regular contact with many business owners in Waterloo because they had concerns about the stay-in-place order, or whatever you'd like to call it. I communicated with several of the mayors, Mayor Hart, Mayor Green. I was doing what I felt should be done as a county supervisor, And I was also very mindful of our economy. The biggest concern I had with this monster was the negative impact it was going to have on our economy. And you know, the hog farmers were concerned about the Tyson shutdown because they were going to be putting pigs down. That concerned me. As a matter of fact, I was going to buy 2 hogs from one of the farmers, and I have slaughtered animals in the past to eat, to consume. And I was going to take these hogs to my property in Wisconsin and slaughter them, but I told the farmer, I was worried after driving 5 hours they were going to become pets and I wouldn't be able to slaughter them and eat them. So those were the activities I was engaging in as a county supervisor. And I'm proud of the place we're in right now. Our economy's not doing as bad as I thought it was going to be doing. This monster's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But we still have individuals in our community that are indeed vulnerable. People with health conditions, the elderly. I am worried about teenagers, 12 to 17, and how susceptible they are. But those are, like I say, I have no regrets about the action I took and the actions I continue to take in regard to COVID.
Sheriff, in a highly controversial comment that you made about COVID-19 and the Test Iowa initiative, you said that, in fact, you told KWWL News, I think it was me you told, I feel this whole Test Iowa thing is a sham, a $26 million publicity stunt for the governor's personal benefit. That was pretty critical of the governor. Do you still stand by that?
Well, I think that Test Iowa has gotten a degree better. I don't think it's where it needs to be. In fact, I still think there's some metrics that are being used to manipulate Test Iowa. Right now, you'll see that our positive rates are increasing very subtly, and it's not because we're meteorically rising in test positives. It's because we're not testing many people. They're just not the tests available. The test throughput at Test Iowa just isn't happening. So it's easily manipulated data. And I think everybody sees that. Particularly when I said that, it was because we were providing security out there. So we were spending a ton of overtime to provide security at a site when 4 people came through. And that was extremely frustrating for me because we were spending 16 hours of overtime with no reimbursement on a flawed system that had not been fully vetted, that was not doing well. And I think everybody's heard, you know, people sitting in lines and waiting. They'll back out of the line and still get a note in the mail that tells people that they've tested positive. You know, there's a lot of flaws in that system. So yeah, I still stand by the fact that there's huge amounts of flaws in the system. Has it improved? I think it has improved. Is it still a bit of a PR stunt? I believe that it is.
Have both of you been tested? Either of you been tested? Anybody?
I have not.
You have not?
No, my wife has because she had surgery, and that's one thing that's unique about this monster. I know several people now who have had COVID. They tested positive for COVID, yet their spouses, their family members haven't gotten it. So this is it's a funky deal.
Am I hearing the chief say that he's underplaying Black Hawk County's role, and I'm going to give you both the chance to respond to that. Is that what you heard? That he felt that the COVID-19 in Black Hawk County was not as bad as it was portrayed to be?
Well, I think what I heard was that there was this air at the very beginning that we were certainly erring on the side of caution, and I think that's true. and we didn't know what we were up against. I think it's a little more clear what we're up against today. But I always shudder, and I always reflect when somebody says it's not as bad as you think. I think about that $500 donation that Dan got from the plant manager at Tyson, and I reflect on the 8 people that died there. And I just wonder if that was worth it. I'm so frustrated that it was that location that violated our defenses. We had things going so well, and that one location started blowing everything out of proportion for Black Hawk County. And it's difficult for me to look at that any other way, because I was there every single day. I was working with the National Guard, I was working with the DOT at the Test Iowa sites, I was working with the health department in many different facets, the health department with the lawn care facilities, the nursing homes. I I was deeply immersed in all of those different areas, and to recognize the one flaw in our defense that jeopardized everyone and jeopardized those folks that are most vulnerable.
I'm not downplaying it. Nationally, what I expected initially was we were going to have people falling over dead in the street. That didn't happen to the extent, and it's a tragedy. People have died, no doubt. People have lost loved ones. Tyson's fully admits that, okay, they could have done better in the beginning, but once they started doing better, they got it right. Matter of fact, they developed a standard that the others are looking at to follow. And when I was talking to a maintenance supervisor, he said, well, and I read that they were putting millions of dollars into technology for robotics, for deboning and such. That concerned me in regard to individuals losing their jobs. But I talked to a maintenance supervisor at the local plant, and he says, no, we're going to still need individuals to work on those robotics, to work on those machines. So they would still have, in essence, the same number of workers. You know, this monster, as I said, changes every day. Circumstances change every day. We need to look at the numbers constantly. It is bad, but it's not as bad as many of us were initially led to believe. And everybody on both sides of the aisle, and this has been a divisive issue. It's Republican, Democrat, wearing masks, not wearing masks. It's become incredibly divisive. The good thing that's come out of this, in my opinion, is this is not going to be our last pandemic. We're going to have another, and another, and another. This is preparing us to confront those and still protect our economy and try to protect the country from crashing and being vulnerable.
Okay, I was asked about this issue recently and was asked to bring it up. Perhaps it's a non-issue. We'll let you guys decide because both of you are involved either directly or indirectly, and that is an endorsement by a pretty well-known local Republican, Josh Wilson, a former aide to one of our governors and has been involved a long time in GOP politics. He endorsed you, Tony, which I think he did, I think going back to your original campaign, I'm not really sure. Chief, you were very upset about that, I understand. In fact, can you kind of clear up the situation, why it bothered you so? I understand to the point where you were threatening to even leave the party. Can you clarify if that's true or not? Or?
Well, I am asking why. You know, I don't think it's good for the party for a person who's associated with the Republican Party to endorse another candidate, especially when there's a viable candidate running. And it's my understanding that he also endorsed one of my opponents in the county supervisor's race. And I keep asking people why, and the only answer I get is that it's a personal issue, and I have no idea what it involves. So I just move on with my life, and I run my candidacy as I see fit, and I'm a man of principle, so I'm going to just run the best campaign as I can.
I don't mean this as a zinger, but were you a Republican when you endorsed Gary Kroger over Walt Rogers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So is that different then, or?
No. I mean, we have our freedom to choose.
Okay, that's what that's the one I'm getting at. So Josh exercised his freedom, and you were doing that.
Yeah, it offended me.
And offended you. Okay, all right. Sheriff, you want to make a quick
And
response? We're going to take a break here shortly.
That's kind of what I find humorous, and I actually made a note of that too. Dan professes to be a constitutionalist, but I'm not sure he knows what that word really means. I get asked that a lot, and sheriffs get asked that a lot. Are you a constitutional sheriff? And normally it's in the context of the Second Amendment, right? Are you going to stand up for my rights to bear arms and carry weapons and things like that? But, you know, constitutionalism means a lot of different things. It talks to, and it speaks to your right to exercise all kinds of freedoms. Certainly, your freedom to endorse whoever or to support whoever you want, regardless of what party you are, is one of the bedstone kind of freedoms that we have here as Americans. To ask the party to have him removed because he endorsed another candidate when my opponent did the exact same thing seems ridiculous. And to sit here even today and say that he's a constitutionalist and do the exact reverse, that seems laughable. He's done the same thing in many other ways. He's taken person's personal freedoms with regard to Second Amendment rights away. He's had people institutionalized because he didn't believe in the same things they believed in. And we could get deeper into that. I actually talked to that gentleman and asked if I could use his name here publicly. And he said absolutely, because he was so offended. But he's actually taken people's rights away because he doesn't, I don't think understands what that word really means.
Chief, do you know who he's talking about? Or
I do, and I need to respond to that.
I was going to say, I'm going to give you plenty of opportunity to do that. Yes, okay? Go ahead.
Because Mayor Clark made me aware of a gentleman that came and talked to him, and Mayor Clark had concerns with this gentleman. So I actually had, Mayor Clark said, Chief, I'd have you bring another officer with you. So Investigator Gergen attended this meeting with me, with Mayor Clark and this person, and the guy was making bizarre comments, concerning comments. He was naming Waterloo police officers that he felt were trying to set him up. He named a local attorney who he felt had wronged him. He named many individuals, and he made one statement where he said society would be better off if people were just lined up and shot. So after this hour meeting, I go back to my office and I discover that this gentleman had been issued a permit to carry and a permit to purchase a firearms weapon by Sheriff Thompson. So I contacted Sheriff Thompson and made him aware of it, and it got to a point where I wrote up a report to have the gentleman committed, evaluated, and they determined that he did indeed have a deficiency. As a matter of fact, he appealed the decision, and the appellate court came back with a decision. As a matter of fact, I just read the decision a few days ago that affirmed the decision that there was a deficiency, and we went through the whole process to have this occur, and in the end, the permit had to be pulled from the gentleman because of his commitment and his evaluation.
Dan, the deficiency was he was depressed. His daughter had been killed in Urbandale, Iowa. He was suffering from anxiety and depression. That was the deficiency. Please tell the people what the deficiency was. He sees things differently. He sees conspiracy theories, yes, but a risk and danger to himself or others, that's the statute. That's what you have to reach. And this gentleman doesn't reach that statute. And you took his constitutional rights away. You had yourself and a secretary sign an emergency committal on him. Not a family member, not anyone else. You did it. And again, we're talking about somebody's constitutional rights. This is something that a sheriff has to determine every single day. This is part of my obligation when we determine weapons permitting. Every single day. This is one of the most important jobs that I have. I strongly disagree with that approach because, again, it's a lifetime ban now for this gentleman.
Last word on this comes from you, Chief, I guess.
I believe it was delusional. There were delusions involved in this situation.
We are going to take a break. When we come back, kind of an unusual situation here. I'm going to have the candidates ask each other a question, or two, or three, depends on what time we have. We're going to take a break. We're online on KWWL.com. We'll come back with the two sheriff's candidates in Black Hawk County in just a moment. Welcome back to this week's hour-long edition of the Steele Report with the two candidates for Black Hawk County Sheriff. The challenger is Republican Supervisor Dan Trelka, former Waterloo Police Chief, and of course he's challenging current Democratic longtime sheriff seeking a fourth term. That is Sheriff Tony Thompson. This segment, we're going to have the candidates ask questions of each other. We've determined earlier, agreed to this, and Chief Dan Trelka, you're going to ask the first question of Tony Thompson. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Tony, these questions were questions people asked me, and I thought, not specifically to ask you, but that were asked of me, and I said, well, that's a good question, I like that. And the first one was a question I was asked when I was running for county board, and they had asked me why I had decided to run with my particular political affiliation. So the question I have is, why have you chosen to run as a Democrat?
Well, there's several reasons. The first of which was pure demographics. And I'll be very transparent about that. When, well before I ever had a thought or even entered into the concept of looking at a political future, I recognized that politically aligning with a party that had the most prevalence in the county made sense. So that was the party that I started aligning with very early on. That's the party that I started hauling hay for. That was the party that I started attending rallies and functions with. That was the party that I started associating with E.J. Gallagher and Pat Sass and Don Page and, you know, some of the old stalwarts in the party. And I recognize too that by and large, they were the party that tends to be recognized as representing the middle class, the working class. And that's largely the makeup of Blackhawk County. And so that was really the draw to why Democrat.
All right, Sheriff Thompson, something for Chief Trelka.
One of the big things that I think everybody gets kind of wrapped around the axle is you've got 30 years in law enforcement, I've got 30 years if you count military and then into civilian, but not everybody can be a sheriff. There are things that you have to know, there's things that you have to be able to do, and a lot of it you have to be able to do day one. Tell me what you know about FE&Ds.
Not much, but I didn't know much about fire inspections by the Marshal's Office when I became involved in the Waterloo Fire Rescue as well. There are people. I manage people, I lead people. I like to say, I know that I could take over a production company and have it be more productive. I was successful in a tourist community in Sturgeon Bay. Looking back, I still can't believe that Mayor Clark gave me the opportunity to be a police chief here in Waterloo. I was unproven. As a matter of fact, when I met Lou Porter, she says, what does a white guy from Door County, Wisconsin know about diversity? And I said, well, I know how to lead people and I know how to treat people with dignity and respect. And it ended up working out because we had a crime rate of, it dropped 32%. Armed robberies down more than 50%. Disorderly conduct's down 80, 90%. Juvenile arrests down 50%. Many, many, many successes. And then I'm here for 9 months. And Mayor Clark asked me to get involved in the fire department. There's a competent staff at the sheriff's office, so I'm going to rely on the staff to engage in the duties that I need them to engage in, and when I have to ask them a question, I'm simply going to ask them a question.
And you do realize that when it comes time to do those, that the liability falls on you as the elected official.
Absolutely.
That when that mistake is made, or when they call and say, how do you want this done, that liability is yours and yours alone.
Yeah, and I'm going to trust in their competence, and I'm going to have confidence in them. They're going to be empowered. The jail captain, any other member of the staff. It's what I did in Sturgeon Bay. It's what I did at the Waterloo Police Department, and it's what I did at Waterloo Fire Rescue.
Now, this is the same jail captain that you came out publicly and said you are going to personally audit jail operations, and he came to me the very next day and said, what am I doing wrong?
Oh,
a guy that has no jail experience whatsoever is going to come through and personally audit the jail in our operations.
What I'm most interested in is auditing the store. I just want to check the pricing, because the one complaint I've gotten from citizens is pricing. This grandmother called me and says, my granddaughter's in jail. I've got to provide her with money to get shampoo, and it just seems like it's expensive. I says, well, those are the things I want to look at. I'm going to take a look at the pricing. Maybe we can offer a larger variety. So that's my largest concern. And if I'm fortunate enough for the people to elect me as sheriff, I'm going to sit down with Captain Neff and get to know him quite well and get to know his philosophy. And I'm going to entrust him. I'm going to empower him.
All right, Chief Trelka, another question for Sheriff Thompson.
Describe your philosophy as it relates to the morale of an organization.
You know, I've had the blessing of being able to teach leadership at a college level. I've been able to teach leadership at a military level. And I recognize morale as a litmus test is more of a fallacy than it is a truism. A person's morale with regard to an agency is more what they bring to the agency than what the agency brings to them. A leader has several obligations. We empower them, just like you say. We give them enough information to do their job. We give them enough equipment to do well. We equip them well. We empower them with enough training and capabilities to go out and do great work. And at the end of the day, those few people that you talk to that say they have morale issues, frankly, are looking for opportunities that far exceed what their capabilities are. And I don't mean that in a mean-spirited way. I mean that in the purest form. You had them at the Waterloo PD. I've got them at the Blackhawk County Sheriff's. Everybody has them in their organization. So morale, again, is what you make of it. We focus not on morale, we focus on making sure that our people are well taken care of, they're well educated, they're well informed, they're well engaged, and they understand their role and their obligation to the organization. They feel responsive and responsible to the organization. With all of that, if they still don't feel like they have good morale, I don't know what more I can do for them.
All right, Sheriff, another question for Chief Trelka.
One of the other huge pieces, and I touched on it very briefly, is we are asking the citizens to determine somebody to take charge of one of the largest organizations in the state of Iowa with absolutely zero experience running a jail. What kind of jail do we run?
I believe it's a direct supervision jail, which is the kind of jail I actually, the Sheriff's Department I started at in Colorado had that type of jail. My response is Sheriff David Clark came from Milwaukee Police Department and took over as Milwaukee's sheriff. Joe Arpaio, I believe he came from the federal system, and he took over the jail, the sheriff's office in Arizona. So these are elected officials, these are leaders, these are managers. I have no concerns at all in me assuming control over the sheriff's office in their jail, none at all. As a matter of fact, I want to get intimately involved in the jail. I plan to spend time in the jail myself. The two biggest things I want to accomplish is fewer people coming back to jail or going to prison after they've been there. How can we accomplish that? And I fully believe in holding people accountable, but I also believe in grace and second or third chances. Also, that has a positive impact on our crime rate throughout the county. So they go hand in hand.
Dan hit the nail on the head. We obviously have larger jurisdiction. We're responsible to all of Blackhawk County. We manage the jail, the courts. We're the enforcement arm of the courts and provide those kinds of issues for them as well, the civil division. And the bigger scope of what an elected office provides rather than being appointed.
Okay, real quickly before we go to break, I want each of you to answer this one too. I think I'll start with you this time, Sheriff Thompson. When you hear the word defund the police, defund law enforcement, what goes through your mind? And I can't have a real long answer from either of you here, but give me your thoughts on that, because that is a hot topic right now.
Right. I think I understand conceptually what it is. I think it should be rephrased. I think it should not be defund. I think it should be redeploy, retrain, reapproach the methodology of the policing that is provided. One of the things that we're approaching right now with Chief Fitzgerald and I is a mobile crisis unit. Those kind of calls where they think that social workers ought to be able to respond over policing, obviously there's still a component where there's safety involved. There's concern about violence. So this mobile crisis unit that can respond to mental health issues or substance abuse issues is a great middle ground for some of that. So I think defunding the police is probably the wrong terminology, and I get why they say that, and maybe in larger, more urban areas that makes some sense, but repurposing the police, I think, is probably a better terminology or a better a position statement for that.
All right, Chief?
Defund the police is people that aren't pro-police, in my opinion. It's a term they use. It's pure craziness. Can we have smart reform? Absolutely. Right before I left the Waterloo Police Department, I went through the calls for service, and the Waterloo Police Department responds to 150 calls per day. And some of the calls I looked at and I said, why are we even responding to this? We can, cops are expensive to hire, they're expensive to train, they're expensive to maintain. We can probably spend our money more wisely, but you can't leave the police out of this dialogue. And that's the mistake that's occurring in Minneapolis and Seattle. They're leaving the police out of the dialogue. Matter of fact, the police chief in Milwaukee got very vocal about it. He says, listen, if you want to do this, you need to include us in these discussions. And shortly thereafter, it appears that he was demoted. I am totally against defund the police. I get it. I believe in reform, smart reform, but law enforcement needs to be involved in the discussion. And the majority of the community feels the same way, I have no doubt.
Well, unfortunately, as I figured, this hour would go by way too quickly. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to come in. We do want to do real quickly, though, a closing statement from both candidates. And again, we had a coin toss earlier. And Chief Dan Trelka, Supervisor Trelka, you go first in your closing statement.
Well, this is an opportunity for me. Like I said, it wasn't my intention to run for sheriff. I thought about running for some sort of office in the future. This was an opportunity that arose. I was asked, I evaluated, I studied it, and I felt it was a good fit for me. What excites me the most is an intertwined issue. And as I've stated earlier, that is, I'm excited to have a goal to lower the number of people who are coming back to the Blackhawk County Jail or going to prison after they've been in the jail. I want to tackle that problem. And also that goes hand in hand with our crime rate. If these people aren't coming back to jail, it means they're not committing more crime. Let's work together as a community. And I'm not talking about spending a lot of money on this issue. I'm going to identify what the inmates thinks they need so that they don't come back to jail. Then I'm going to come back to the community and I'm going to say, here's what I need. I need housing. I need skills trainings. I need mentorships. What can you do to help us? I need jobs. I've already talked to businesses that are willing to provide jobs for inmates when they come out. I've talked to an employment agency that's willing to evaluate inmates when they're getting ready to come out of jail. Sadly, there are some inmates that get released from jail and all of a sudden they're homeless. That was a concern that a homeless advocate brought to me. I think we can do more. I think we can do better. It's a problem I want to tackle. I'm giving the citizens of Blackhawk County a choice. I'm happy to provide a choice to our voters, and we'll see how it comes out in the end. And it's going to be a good, spirited campaign, and sadly, I'm enjoying the campaign. Because it's been brutal for both me and Sheriff Thompson. Some people get mean. That's the bad part of getting involved in politics. But I think Tony and I agree that as we're in politics longer, our skin gets thicker, and it has to be. And I give anybody credit who decides to run for any elected office.
All right, Chief, thank you very much. Closing statement now, you get the final word, Sheriff Tony Thompson.
Well, Ron, again, I want to thank you. I want to thank KWBL for the opportunity. You guys have made something happen that, again, for the candidates is very tough to do during a time of COVID and pandemic. I also want to thank the employees of the Sheriff's Office, our staff, our volunteers. Every day they make us proud, and they make me just that much more proud to be both the sheriff and to be given the opportunity to represent them each and every day as their sheriff. I also appreciate the opportunity to interface and to interact with all the people that work with us, the mayors, the chiefs of police, the fire chiefs, everybody that's endorsed me along the way, city councilmen. I appreciate the undying support, everybody that stepped up, partnering with our agency each and every day. You have my respect and my admiration, my appreciation. Probably most importantly, my wife Janelle, my boys. Like Dan said, running a campaign is not for the faint of heart. It's a difficult thing, and I recognize that the challenges that I put them through every 4 years. It's right to be vetted. It's good to be vetted every 4 years. This is not one of those things that one should not anticipate having to go through, the gauntlet that you run. But the toll that it takes on family is not fair, and so I appreciate the fact that they let me serve in this significant way, and it's an honor to be able to continue to do this and serve at my very best abilities. The very last thing I would say is my campaign at its very foundation is about trust. I feel like I've done what I need to do for 12 years now, and probably even before that, otherwise I wouldn't have been elected the first time, to try and establish trust in all that I do, to stand transparently in front of people, whether it's in front of a camera trying to locate a missing autistic boy, or standing in front of them telling them the bad news about COVID-19 or whatever the case may be. I feel like I've established trust in what I do each and every day. I bring that kind of energy, that kind of determination, and that kind of focus to the job that I do, and I feel like for those reasons, I'm ready to continue to earn your trust for another 4 years. Be sure to get out there and vote, whether you're doing it absentee, whether you're doing it by satellite, whether you're doing it by early voting at the courthouse, we certainly want to encourage you to get out and vote.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. Very, very interesting race for sure. And you mentioned absentee. Well, the absentee ballots go out this week. Election Day is November 3rd. Thanks for watching on this week's edition of the Steele Report. We'll be back again next week. Thanks for watching.